on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Once we're live everywhere, we'll go ahead and officially get started. If you have any questions for our guest today or any comments you want to bring up to the episode, please let us know. That's why we do it live. Put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address the questions or any comments you have during today's episode. So in the meantime, hang tight, and we'll be here shortly. All right, we're there, and now one more to go, and then we'll be officially live. So 2 out of 3, we're almost there. Okay, here we go. We're ready to start. Okay. Welcome back to Coach Connect. Here's where we explore the stories and strategies and insights from trailblazers who are transforming the world of coaching and well-being. What drives their success and what fuels their passion for helping others. We're here to uncover their secrets and share them with you. This show is brought to you by Value.io, the all-in-one coaching platform designed to empower coaches with the tools, resources, and support we need to thrive and help our clients achieve meaningful, long-lasting growth. I'm Dr. Diego Salinas, your guide on this journey today. As a neuroscientist, physician, health coach, and co-founder of Viably, I'm committed to celebrating the incredible work of coaches everywhere and helping them unlock their full potential. So together, let's dive in deep into what makes coaching a powerful force of change. My guest today, Erika Jackson, who received her undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's degree in labor and human resources from The Ohio State University, which supported her work in human resources and organizational leadership in banking, government, and Fortune 500 retail organizations. Erika is the Chief Coaching Officer for Wellcoaches, leading a team of 50 coach leaders from all over the world who have trained over 16,000 coaches since 2020. She's co-author of critical health and wellness coaching texts such as the Coaching Psychology Manual, the Complete Handbook of Coaching, 23, and a pilot study of health and wellness coaching on fibromyalgia. She's also the co-creator of a validated well-being inventory published in the Well-Being Coaching Inventory, Questionnaire Development and Validation, American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, 2025. Erika is also an instructional design consultant for Improve Edge, combining neuroscience and improvisation, and serves as a volunteer instructor for Braver Angels, designing workshops that bring Americans together to bridge the partisan divide. As for fun, Erika launched a community theater and sings in a band with her husband and children. Listen to Erika on the Wellcoaches Inside podcast, featuring the inspirational. Sorry, the thing froze here. Featuring inspirational stories from coaches and leaders from Shape the World. Erika, thanks so much for being on the episode today. Really honored to have you here.
Oh, thanks. I love your energy and the tone of your voice. I could listen to it all day. I think it's very calming.
I appreciate that. Just today, for our listeners, I have a little bit of a head cold, so today might be struggling a little bit more than normal. So, Erika, thanks for that. And to get started, there's so much of a career you've had and such an impact you have. But I kind of want to step back a little bit to the beginning a little bit. Maybe when you're,
Sure.
going to Ohio, getting started. What do you think has been that thing that fuels your passion, right, to get to helping others that really led you here? What was those initial part of that journey like for you?
Well, I go all the way back to the time that I was working as a manager of training and development for a large retail organization that really sacrificed its human beings. There was no regard for work-life balance. In fact, I was once sitting in a meeting, it was a succession planning meeting, and they were deciding who was going to be put forward for promotions. And the people that were being ruled out were women who had, at some point in conversation with coworkers, mentioned thinking about getting pregnant, right? And so they were ruled out for not devoting their entire life to this particular organization. And at the
Audacity, huh?
time, yeah, I had strep throat for 6 months. I kept breaking out in hives. In fact, one time in the middle of conducting training, it started to swell so bad that participants said, Erika, you got to stop and go to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So I
Scary.
had to go on medication for that. And I would cry on the way to work and leave crying. And so one day I'm sitting in this conference room under fluorescent lights, wondering, what am I doing with my life?
Mm.
And I must have at the time been doing some research for training I was developing or something like that. And I came across this poem that was by a woman named Donna Markova. And I looked it up really quickly. I used to in my youth, 30 years ago, had it memorized. But the first line is, I will not die an unlived life. And then it goes on to say, I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to live, to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as seed goes on to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. And I didn't know it at the time, really, that was a conversation in poetry form about coaching. And also,
Mm.
of course, it spoke to me just about my squandering my seeds.
Mhm.
And I was living in fear. And so it was really in that moment that I decided it was time for something new to emerge. And as the universe conspires for us, at
Yeah.
the same time, my dearest, one of my dearest friends, who actually happened to be my pastor at the time, was let go from his role at our church. That's another long story. It wasn't some terrible scandal about something he did wrong, but he discovered this thing called coaching as this new emerging thing, in the late
Mm.
1990s called coaching. And he said, Erica, why don't you come learn about coaching with me? And again, this was early. I said, I don't know. I don't want to do any of that Oprah Winfrey stuff. It just seems
Right.
so woo woo. Um,
Yeah.
I said, but I'll go to a training. And so I signed up for training with an organization. This was 2000. And it was in Atlanta. I live in Ohio. And I took my sister and I said, I'm going to go to this thing. It's for the weekend. We'll just go shopping after the first day, probably, because I'm just going to check it out. Well, I abandoned my poor baby sister in the hotel all weekend because I so fell in love with, oh my gosh, the connections, the relationships, the intimacy that happened in that space. And so I guess that first weekend, a coach was born, having had all those inputs. And it wasn't long after that I left the role that was making me sick. Um, and frustrated because not only, was there certainly some discrimination going on, but also I was having conversations with employees about their performance, but I wasn't allowed and didn't have the tools to dig into the rest of their lives. What else was
Mm.
happening that was contributing to them not showing up at their best in the workplace. So I left that role. My friend who had urged me to check into this thing called coaching, started a private coaching business. We were doing private coaching, writing newsletters back in the day where you weren't overwhelmed every day with, 50 newsletters in your inbox. People actually read them back then. and through another series of events, we connected with Margaret Moore, who had just started Wellcoaches, and I began just doing some consulting for Wellcoaches, writing and doing some practical exams at the time. We were the first health and wellness coach training school, and designed this idea of doing an oral exam beyond a written exam. So that was my origin story. And I'll just pause because, well, I'm a coach and I like to engage and get reaction.
Yeah. First thing on mind is that your voice also, as you're saying this, I can feel the emotion and kind of the different seasons of change, and that despair, kind of uncertainty first, or that kind of being closed in, and then the poem you said I forgot it. I mean, it was so vivid. That first line, I will not die an unlived life.
Yeah, isn't it beautiful?
There's a saying you mentioned in Spanish that it's la vida hay que vivirlo. It's like life has to be lived. It's like life is an action verb. It's not something. It's something you do. It's not something that kind of to point happens to you. And it sounds like your story, in a sense, similar to mine, where you took a little bit of a leap of faith, and what is this coaching thing someone's saying about? I don't know, maybe a little woo, and really had this transformative experience of like, wait, this, this immediate resonance with it kind of something to clarify or shine light to an area that you didn't know was dark in a way. Like, I didn't know this tool was there, and this could be applied in so many ways.
Yeah, I didn't really know I was so sick, honestly, physically and emotionally until after I stepped out of it, and then had the experience through coaching of living this joyful career. I didn't really know that was possible. And for anybody who's listening and knows me, you do know now that I am a girl who is all about woo. But I had been so programmed coming out of, master's program in human resources that everything was about rules and measurement, and spreadsheets and black and white. I'd lost touch with my creativity and the belief in my instincts and my true nature, which is about deep, fast, intimate connections with people. So I got to rediscover that through coaching.
Yeah, and it sounds like beforehand too, Erika, that you were already doing some training, so you already kind of had some interest in teaching and training earlier on,
Yeah.
More in that traditional corporate sense. But this kind of allowed you to combine that passion with that whole new light of the letting the say the woo, maybe call the art of the science of this, right? Because there's definitely, I think coaching is a beautiful field where it's so based in science, which is why it's reproducible, and we'll talk in a second about the studies you guys created and the scientific standards. And there's an art to the science, right? Like the practice of medicine, the practice of coaching. And I think that's where the real magic is, when you have that authentic, true self showing up through this lens, this evidence-based lens of transformation that does feel so, or can feel so qualitatively different than other models of helping or connecting someone that are out there.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say I had an interest in training. I am actually a extreme introvert. I much prefer to be behind the scenes, developing courses. My role as operations officer at Wellcoaches, and developing policy and scoping out the big picture. But there's something really different about coach training. That much like coaching, is that I'm not just providing information as the expert. I am facilitating insight. I am supporting new coaches and having a deeper understanding of themselves
Mm.
and creating an environment where they can access empathy and compassion through through the skills and tools that we're teaching. And so I don't dread facilitating coach training. It's just very different than teaching about how to conduct a performance improvement plan, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's you know, I come from the other end of the introverted spectrum. I'm definitely a big extrovert, and I've always loved teaching. But it was always because I liked that aha that when I was learning something, oh, that's a cool idea, kind of that opening of possibilities. And I think coaching taught me that teaching isn't this paternalistic. I'm doing this to you this one much information, right? I first thought, okay, if I teach,
Yeah.
I got to know a lot more to make sure I can answer the questions that are the next, the one, if it's a 101 class, make sure you can, 202 level, just in case they ask those questions. And then coaching, teaching coaching feels like almost like coaching. It's a partnership, right? It's not that there's this one roadmap. You're trying to have them understand. You said insight. To me, I think as a coach, the deliverables we have is help someone facilitate more insight and form momentum. And each journey is a little different, their starting point, but where they're going and how to encapsulate this different way of viewing the world. And it is a beautiful thing to see that process because it is a challenging. If you're not used to coaching, it's not most how people talk in the world, right? It's not how we're trained or how we're
Mm,
conditioned to
yeah.
interact with one another, right? And then when you learn it though, or you start helping others go through this transformation themselves, is a very different. You're right. It's not a PowerPoint where I can say, this is the heart, and this is how the chambers, and this is the answers A, B, and C, right? It has to have the art in it, and it's really helping humans
Hmm.
develop.
Our lesson two in our program is on the surface about open-ended inquiry or questions and reflections. And I know that students come to that lesson thinking, oh, all right, this is easy. We've all heard about this. Who doesn't listen? Who doesn't know how to ask questions?
Mm.
And it's actually delightful to find them struggling in that class. Seeing the realization that those foundational concepts, when done masterfully, are so much deeper, so much more intentional than the way that we approach a conversation with a friend over coffee or would have approached a prescriptive conversation um, uh, or expert conversation, and and that knowing how to do those things well beyond the surface, deeper than the surface, are the foundation for everything else that we do as coaches.
Yeah, yeah. And I think coaching is interesting when you read. I remember being in the class and reading the first few manuals, and like reflect back, how, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of what's really interesting about coach training is that I always tell those who I'm supporting through that process is that you really have to be a real client in that. A lot of learning happens in the
Mm,
client seat because I
yeah.
mean, I'm here to be like a reflection. How powerful can this, And then I always reference back to like one of my early triad sessions, or I went from the class to be a demo or something, and there's one simple reflection. You're a playful person. That's still like 8 years later, just like so sticks with me, right? And so I would say it's this interesting thing. You have to be on both sides of that, I think, to really understand the impact these things have. Because on paper, it can seem so two dimensional,
Mm,
right? And then to point, because when it's done masterfully, I think there is a range there, right? The initial part is
sure.
can feel I mean, it's real. I remember it feels really clumsy starting off, like, and I was like, yeah, I'm not flowing yet. I go, guys, maybe let's put that flowing is a thing you do once you have skill. Like flow, you can't improv a jazz class until you've played music for a while. So let's maybe not go to flow, just try to do the scales for a little bit. But it is this beautiful, I think you start seeing these glimpses of what's possible there, and that kind of push you to continue for that masterful level, because it is it just feels like nothing quite like that sometimes when you have that real, that deep, authentic, raw connection.
Yeah, there is nothing like feeling heard, for real. Maybe even for the first time, or for the first time in a long time. And that's why coaching conversations don't have to be an hour long, 30 minutes long. You can change a life in 10 minutes. You can change a life with one reflection, just as in your example. How magic is that?
I think it's the, or it's for the woo meets the science, right? There is that
Yeah.
that magic there. And Erika, so you really, I see we're trailblazers in the intro, but you really have been here in this industry. I mean, was there before you were around, but in the early stages of forming, right when Wellcoaches started. So I'm really curious if you can kind of go back to, then and now. How have you seen coaching evolving, or like the coaching training have changed in those last 2 or 3 decades? Like what do you see the big change, or maybe that you've seen after teaching for so long, right? If you could give us a
Yeah.
zoomed out perspectives.
Let me just talk about kind of some things that I've seen in the industry, and then maybe I can just also talk about what I've learned about students and teaching. um, First of all, thank goodness, we have to explain what coaching is less than we used to.
It must
We
have been
haven't
rough back then, because
quite
it's still kind of
achieved.
hard now.
Yeah, we haven't quite achieved it yet, but there was absolutely no context for even describing it way back in the day. And when I went through my first coach training program, as far as I'm aware, nobody was investing in the science of it, in the research. It was what they were doing in many ways just so happened to have been effective. But that was because they had good instincts around it. The program that I went through was really created by actors and financial planners in New York City. um, and born out of a realization that in those spaces, actors needed some deeper level conversations to access the best parts of themselves, and clients of financial planners needed to be thinking about a bigger vision in order to make concrete, meaningful plans for their finances. But there wasn't research, there wasn't science. And so Wellcoaches and now many other organizations, both schools and healthcare organizations, have realized we've got to begin to measure this and describe why we're doing what we're doing works, and to prove that. So that's been a huge evolution. I think I'm also starting to see some of the silos coming down, some less territory claiming in this industry. So way back in the day, psychologists were, not all of them, but there were psychologists that were particularly worried, annoyed, angered, all the things about coaches entering what they believed was their space. And frankly, we saw a lot of that from dietitians. And now we see a number of psychologists um, adopt the coach approach. um, uh, and I would say the latest version of the motivational interviewing book by Miller and Rolnick helped that case because the language in that book is far more coach-like than previous editions. And perhaps they always intended to sound that way in previous editions, but in the latest edition really found the language for that. So I believe that's been helpful um, in breaking down that barrier. I also think that people see that there is space. It's a both and. People can become coaches or people can be coach like in the world that they're already working. So, a dietitian, an exercise physiologist can still be proud of the years of education and experience that they bring and proud of discovering, a new way or an additional tool set for engaging with their clients. Coaches aren't we're not trying to replace anyone. We're just really we're not trying to be, this is not my quote. We're not trying to be best in the world. We're trying to be best for the world. That's a quote from
Mm,
a National Geographic photographer named DeWitt Jones. So
love that quote.
we have to honor that professionals, coming into our schools, for example, are professionals who worked really hard to get to where they are, to earn those degrees and licenses and other certifications. Um, and then it can be hard for them to hear that their way or the way they were taught 30 years ago in grad school or even 10 years ago in grad school um, may not be the only way or the only best way to
Mm,
to work. Um,
yeah.
I'll just pause there in case that brought up any curiosities for you,
Oh,
and then
there's so many. I probably want to continue going, but I'll take that and reflect back some more there. The kind of going back to when you initially started, kind of earlier on, it sounds like it was, you know, in a lot of ways following a lot of fields in terms of scientific evolution, right? You start with anecdotal evidence or kind of a like, hey, we're noticing this thing, we're doing this, and it seems like when we coach people, there's a change. This is a case study, anecdotal evidence, right? And then what do you think? Well, is this correlation, causation? Is there something
yeah,
affecting it here, right? What is, you get curious about mechanisms, right? Or processes, reproducibility, right? So I think it sounds like initially, I think most fields have to start with just an observation. People
yeah,
observe there's a change here, and something you alluded to a few times, and when you're just speaking, is that even though we work in change, change is hard. People actually resist change. There's silos, institutions, people resist change, right? Like that. There's it's this interesting duality of human being, right? At the end, where we want to improve homeostasis, but this involves constant change. So, in that, it sounds like the research that had to come from there, and it is sometimes harder to research on some of these things when there's so much variability, right? It's a little easier to do something that's a little more quantifiable, like the temperature reading on thermometer, right? Versus how much are you improving, right? So there is
yeah,
definitely, it's hard for so many reasons because each brain's a little different, language is different, the how do you measure the effect. But it sounds like really being able to start approaching that way. I'm wondering from your perspective, Erica, I would assume it allowed the field to start having that bigger buy-in, right? Starting having some of those silos come down, or people start trusting it more of saying, wait, this is something I heard on Oprah versus is a tool that we can all use. I have a lot more thoughts.
yeah.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Because we were there kind of early on, seeing that research change and evolve. Do you think that contributes significantly? Well, it's a leading question. How do you think that might affect the field? Coaching, right?
Sure, absolutely. Research helps. I want to come back to something you said, which is people resist people resist change. Um, I do actually think that that's true in some cases, and what I think people resist the most is having change force upon them.
Oh,
The
nice. Yeah.
insistence of being changed.
That's
um, and of course, that's true with clients. That's also true. Speaking from my experience and watching coaches come to our training program. Gosh, we sure love it when dozens or hundreds of employees are sent to coach training to our organization. And that comes with a very difficult consequence, which is they were told that they need to go to training and change how they do their work.
and they sit
And
in the front row like this.
exactly, it's exactly what happens. Yeah, sit that, you prove it to me. Now, thankfully, um,
Mm.
coaching is such a beautiful science and art that people often come away very enthusiastic. Just a side note, I remembered it reminds me of this time where I was doing an in-person training, and two girls, young women, probably in their 20s, came up to me at the end of the first day and said, "Gosh, our boss, thinks that this training is about something completely different." Probably like,
Yeah.
yeah, giving nutritional recipes or prescription for exercise. Please don't tell her, because we love this. We do not want to leave this training. So
Mm.
amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Because coach training is transformational, not only for the way that we do our work, but for the way just we are, the way we be, um, in our own life. I think that so many people in healthcare have been programmed to believe that their value comes from expertise, information, prescription, advice giving, and there's a place for that, of course, of course, of course. Um, in times when it's necessary, particularly, in emergency situations, life or death situations. But here's another shift that I would like to make in the industry. When I went through coach training, um, now, my gosh, 30 years ago, um, here's what I heard over and over again. The client does all the work. The client does all the work. The client does all the work. The coach doesn't offer anything. It's not about the coach. Um, and that's just baloney. uh,
Agreed. Agreed.
we need to shift our perspective and boldly claim that coaches have a lot to offer. And we, in fact, are experts. We are experts in growth promoting relationships, in relational skills, in being skills, in leveraging uh, virtues and strengths in clients, in creating the space to honor self-determination. I could go on and on and on. So I think that shift is starting to emerge, but that's a vision that I have, that we claim our expertise proudly. It looks a little bit different.
Yeah. It is so different, right, than other. If you look at like, healthcare models, right? And people heard seen my episodes, heard before. I remember one of my mentors, like we were training and doing a triad in person. We're walking back to the main room, and she's pulled aside. She's like, "Diego, stop trying to solve the problem. It's not your job anymore." Your point of people
Mm.
resist change brought upon them. And I remember someone said, "Hey, put your hand out." Right now, we're not in the same room, right? I said, "Put your hand out," and they start pushing. Why are you pushing me? Well, because you're pushing me. right? And the writing
Yeah.
reflex for all those coaches, right? It comes from a
Yeah.
good place. We do this because we want to help. And if you look at just pure behavioral reinforcement, we've been reinforced much of our schooling and training and
Sure.
careers to solve problems, to have the answer, to do it for them, right? To either go to the boardroom and figure out how to make more ROI or KPIs, or go to suture and whatever it is, right? So and coaching is such a difference there, where there's this partnership level, and we're really creating that contained space, and there is things that we're doing. I love that you brought that up, Erica, because
Yeah.
sometimes people say, "Well, I'm just here." I'm like, we're not flies on the wall. We're not just like a blank. We're not this. This is not what coaching is, right?
Yeah. That's right.
And it doesn't mean that I know when I'm coaching, I'm tired afterwards. I've put a lot of energy into being quiet and not talking all the time and holding space and noticing my judgments and when to do something else, right?
Hmm.
And we're learning and continue evolving our practice as well. And I think that I do love that this idea we could reclaim or um, be more prouder and clear about what we're doing, and actually talk what we're doing versus like, oh, we're not doing therapy. Well, it doesn't match what we're doing actually. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, just going back to what we said something earlier, Eric, about initially the field, people being siloed or protective of their space, with like nutrition or therapy, and here's, I think, the reality that behavior change is not a thing that's unique to any. Multiple fields can use a skill set, right? And an analogy I came up with the other week was like sutures. Many kind of physicians learn how to do sutures, or some who are really like plastic surgeons are really great for sutures at a certain part of the face because all these different things. But a lot of people can use some of those skill sets, right? And
Mm.
I think when instead of being this combative stuff, one of my coaches actually told me this phrase, and I'm gonna then pass over to you here. He was a therapist in the state he lived in, and he also was a coach. Right? This was maybe 2 3 years ago, and when we did a discovery call, he didn't know much of my background. He didn't know and I'm always curious to hear how we, as other providers, explain what we're doing. And so he's giving me his discovery call and explaining what to expect. And he goes, now he's a therapist, so he can say this. I'm not a therapist, I can't say this phrase, but he said, coaching allows me to use the science of therapy, but not be limited by the diagnosis of therapy. Right? To me, I
Mm.
say we're all looking at the
Yeah.
brain still in some way, or the human condition in some way. There's going to be overlapping things, and it doesn't mean that we're replacing each other's jobs, but there's that continuum, right? Like the human body is not siloed out into like the heart. It's one system, and so I'm wondering, with the science community, people being open to change, that we can own what we can bring to our fellow uh, colleagues, professionals. We can learn from each other, curbside consult, right? Because I think we can, and what about coaching, something alluded to earlier is that you said, people come with these degrees before that, right? And I like you, when I signed my coach training program, Eric, I thought it was a teaching program. I was like, okay, I'm gonna find a better way to do a course for new parents. Perfect. All right. And someone recommended this program, health and
Yeah.
well-being. I was like, oh, perfect. Whatever it is. I'm a nerd. I love teaching. Sign me up. And this thing that really struck me, which is why I'm so passionate about it, I was like, wait, this is a lens of transformation, but you can apply this with so many different things: your background knowledge, your passions, your understanding of certain communities or people or groups, and how to meet them where they're at. And so that's where to me, the magic of coaching is how widely varied this skill set can show up. It's not limited to this traditional model. And I'm blabbering here because I'm a little cold and not my best today, but I do.
You're
You mentioned
great.
before being siloed. It reminded me that like a few years ago, when I was living a while back, I was in North Carolina. There was a therapist who would refer to me, back and forth. It was
Mm.
like she had people with depression, and hey, they need behavior activation. They need to work on and so that I'm like, so this field is definitely changing that way. I think there's still
Yeah.
ways to go, and I think if we can maybe own what we do and what we bring to it, and how we collaborate and keep on learning from each other, I wonder or hope that will continue to um, allow us to work better together, learn from each other, and that synergistic approach and benefits we get from that.
For
And I'll
sure.
pause here, and Erica can give you some space.
There's room enough for all of us. And we have a partner called Preventia. They're based in Indiana, and they're doing amazing work at universities for students who are seeking out mental health support and were needing to wait weeks, sometimes months, to see someone at the student wellness center because they didn't have enough resources. There weren't enough mental health providers. And so coaches have been able to fill the gap there and provide somebody for that student to talk to, often within hours of them submitting a request. Wouldn't we rather have that? Enable someone to have an immediate human connection that maybe saved a life, or generated a sense of hope or connection, or in that student a sense of worth, than the territories. You also mentioned, the measurement. I guess the other vision I have for this industry, yes, I know in many settings we need to be measuring the biometrics, and the impact of coaching in those spaces. But couldn't we also measure and equally value someone's shift in their identification of their strengths, of their own self efficacy, of their sense of esteem, of the joy that they're experiencing? Wow, what a shift that would be in our priorities in the world.
Yeah.
I don't remember what also led me to think about this, but I just want to affirm whatever you said that made me think, a good coach doesn't just go to training to learn about how to be a coach, whether being a coach. A good coach is a coach in their whole life, in every space that they're showing up in. They're using the varied kind of complex reflections, curious, probing, deepening inquiries, and curiosity in every space that they're in, so that it's in their DNA, it's in their gut, in their bones. It is who they are. They are coach. And then that makes it natural when they show up in that way, not inauthentic when they show up in that way in their work. Whew, and I just want to say, I am not perfect at this. My children and my husband certainly would not say that. Uh, but I do try. I do try.
Erica, appreciate that. It reminds me of so a few things that go back to the measurement part. I really agree with you there because as wonderful as listen, I'm a scientist, I'm all about the evidence base.
Yeah.
Not everything can measure by MRI. I go, listen, there's no MRIs can tell me if you're feeling better today or not. Like it's just this is so I think we were missing the data. Self-reported data is still data because again, I can't take your blood sample and say are you fulfilled. Right? Are you more confident
Yeah.
by a blood gas? It's not some of those things we measure. And we have, PHQs, getting nice things to help measure stuff. But again, the complexity of the human experience, whenever you're measuring something that's so 3D in a two-dimensional model, there's going to be, of course, loss of fidelity information. That's just look at MP3 players or CDs. It's kind of how it works. When you compress things down, you're going to lose information. Not to the bathwater. And I really hope that maybe, for example, one of the thoughts I had that now we have better access to tools to measure people's language content that, maybe after a session, do a transcription. Let's look at the qualitative changes in their vocabulary, their language. Someone says, I feel better today. That's the result. Wow, that's I didn't think of that way. That's to me the result we're going for, right? I'm pretty sure you see that first, and then later on the A1Cs will go down, the whatever will happen, right? Those other things that are more
Yeah.
quantitative, maybe. And you mentioned about not being perfect, but coaching really embody all those things. The story you mentioned of those students who came to the training earlier and were like, don't tell our boss how good this is. Again, you think of a training program or a learning, you're going to go there to do something for someone else. And it's one of those programs like, whoa, this could be really life-changing if I embody and view the world different this way. And I had good friends that came down a few weekends ago to visit with their kids, and they would sometimes comment like, wow, you pause now. I think I talk fast
Mm.
now. 10 years ago, I never paused. I never did a reflection, right? And when I meet someone new, I've noticed how the non-judgmental approach of coaching. I've always thought I was an open-minded guy, very curious, loving, accepting, but then noticing how much, again, judgment's okay. If I say I like your earrings, Erica, it's a judgment, right? But just noticing how much judgment could be a instinct, and stepping back from that when you see people who don't have that's such amount of time of viewing the world through that lens. So it is really this one of those things that you get so much as you give as well.
Mm.
And to all the, I appreciate your honesty about, your friends and family might say this. I hear a lot of my students say, Diego, I mean, how can I be a good coach if I also struggle with weight management? How can I be a good
Mm.
coach if I've gone through a divorce? How can I be a good coach if I've insert whatever you want here, right? If you're listening, think about what is your own limiting factors, beliefs. And one of those days someone brought that up, my first response was, actually, you'll be a way better coach because you realize how hard this stuff actually is.
Yeah.
I go, even when you know the manual, how to do it, you've read the coach psychology manual, you understand behavior change. I've said this before too. One of my clients one time said, Diego, your life must be so easy. You know how the brain works. Eric, I literally was like, can I pause our session? Pause the session. I was like, no one really knows it. Like, not me, not human. Like, science is
Yeah.
evolving, field in time, right? 5 years ago, we thought the Earth was in the middle of the universe, right? But it doesn't mean we can't be starting now. And I said, even if I did know somehow, source, divine intervention, I was able to hold all this knowledge in my head some way. I go, doesn't mean that just because I know about negative thought traps doesn't mean I don't experience negative thought traps,
Mm.
right? But now I can better chance of acknowledging or being aware of it, first of all, which is the first step to be able to make a change, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I think there's in so much of, I'll be honest, our culture at large is such a black and white thinking. You're great or it's canceled. Like it's, and people look to the experts. Well, show me if you're going to be my thing, show me your success. Show me your right. And I'm like, this is not, I don't know, it's just a different model, right? And so I think where
Mm.
that if you actually come up with an empathetic, that compares to a human point of view, yeah, we're all sloppy stars figuring it out. It actually can make you a way better provider. And
Yeah.
I wish more industries had that level of honest authenticity where it's not to all or none, because I would imagine if a client thinks that way, it's going to be really hard to feel vulnerable and be honest if you think your coach or provider is perfect and they're the perfect shining example of this human being, and you can attain that.
Oh gosh, I mean that is definitely something I've learned as a coach trainer, that the students want their trainer to be vulnerable and real, to tell real stories about their own personal life struggles, or the ways in which they fall short, or as a coach, and that is role modeling how to show up for clients. I think you're also, kind of tangentially here talking about biases. And I think that's another evolution in the field that I'm so grateful for. Not the evolution of having bias, but the recognition of the biases that we bring. Let's face it, coaching was first championed by well-educated, middle-aged, middle class, higher class white folks, right? And that was the lens through which many of the theories developed, which left a lot of people out, and also created this landscape where clients were looking at the field of options for coaches to choose from and didn't see anybody that looked like them. For so many years, everybody in our classes was a white woman, of a certain age. Although, as a side note, when we went to Brazil, there were more men in the class than women, which I thought was just delightful. What a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
But bias isn't just about like race or gender. It is about things like exercise comes really easy for me. Not for me personally, but just in theory, exercise comes really easy for me. I don't understand, I don't understand how it can be hard for people. Or, it's just so easy to run over to Whole Foods and get delicious fruit. I mean, like, what's the problem? And then you realize you're talking to someone who lives in South Dakota and the nearest food source is 45 minutes away and it's a gas station, right? It's things like the importance of spirituality or religion in the client's life versus my own, or the culture of their family in which they did or did not process emotions. When I came from a family that laid it all out there, it's all those things that can come into play. Going back to the coach being an expert and the coach working really hard during a conversation, those are the things that we always need to be processing and paying attention to in order to honor that person and really deeply get to know them and shut up our own voices, put those in our pocket to come back to later.
Yeah, man, when you said this of your own voices, I remember just Erika flashed to a story when I had just finished training and I was working with a client and they were like, and the old training of like just telling people what to do is there. And I was like, oh, and they're saying, hey, man, I really love nature. I really want to work out. And they're like, quite little, I'm like, go on a hike, dude, right? Like I was really thinking that in my head. And then I was like, you know what? I know the manual said this and this and this, but we've been dancing for 10 minutes. I'm gonna go back to the old method and be like, have you thought about, And then it was like, oh, wow. It so didn't land at all. And doesn't matter when you get someone the answer. It's so much more powerful to let them come to their own answer because they know their life better than I ever will. And, look at neurodivergence. I have ADHD or some version of, we're all different. It's 100 billion neuron, 10 trillion synapses that change day by day. It's a mathematically impossible to the same brain twice in the universe. It's a mathematical reality. Right. And so there's also the woo and magic of this, but also the math of this. To me, that the awe is that it could be both. And, I always tell people, listen, I don't think I can ever know you better than yourself. Even if we spend an hour a week for 6 months, or let's say 2 hours a week, you've lived for so many more hours than that. there's so much more experience that I just never will know. Like there's not enough time for me to, and to the point you said about, isn't it easier to go to Whole Foods or something? I think about for procrastination, right? Oh, isn't it just, hey, here's Pomodoro technique, or here's a way, and you're like, yeah, my brain is just so different. And if you don't meet someone where they're at, right, it's not deficiency. And if you step back, our diversity, the differences we have, it's why we're such a powerful species because we're all different, right? We're kind of able to get out of the food chain largely because we're all different and collaborating. It's not a lot of animals can say that, right? And I think coaching really honors that, where it says, okay, well, I'll be the expert here to change. You're the expert in yourself. And so you come with the answers, not because I'm trying to be stern and difficult and be like, force you to do it, just because there's this honoring of that expertise, that knowledge, that values, what's important and what drives them. Your internal motivation is different than mine. And it is nice seeing the coaching landscape change. I'm part of a bilingual coaching group. I coach in Spanish as well. And we often talk about the cultural considerations there, right? They still, if I'm painting broad brushstrokes, still want you to give them the answer because you're the specialist. There's still more reverence to that compared to other cultures, right? Or how the family structure is going to be a little different, or the food is love, for example, right? So it is wonderful seeing the space continue to open up. So it's not just by privilege for privilege. It was a really great starting point, but I really want to see coaching expand out different in every way, race, populations, topics covered, or how this is integrated into other models that coach approach can be really helpful for different things, no matter what you remember what you're doing really.
So exciting. I love your role modeling of vulnerability there when you said you say to your client, I can't possibly know all the things about you. I am not this wizard of Oz behind the curtain with all-knowing insight. I am
Mm,
going to miss things, client. So please tell me when I am missing things. Please tell me when I've misinterpreted, misheard. It is not about me being right. It is about you being heard.
yeah. So I guess excited there. Funny enough, I know you also enjoy acting and improv. I actually was the Wizard of Oz in a sixth grade play. So funny enough, they
Amazing.
used to do magic tricks. But I think from a coach training's perspective, what got me really excited there is that I tell all my students to go, listen, coaching is not a magic trick.
Mm,
You can tell your clients it's science, right? You can tell your clients
yeah.
exactly what you're doing, and it's still going to be effective. I know my coach when they reflection, I know what they're doing. It's still effective, right? And
Yeah.
my metaphor for science here is that when you learn how insulin works, it doesn't stop lowering
Mm,
your blood sugar all of a sudden just because you learn how it worked,
mm,
right? And so
yeah.
you can be fully. And I had this experience that I often give example of. I was doing some coaching at a university. It's the same idea you mentioned earlier. University had limited resources for mental health. They were pandemic, needing more support, right? They did a pilot study for coaching. And I was able to be part of that pilot and coach it for a bit. And one of the students I was coaching, he was a master's student, computer science, and he's like, first day, he said, "Listen, I'm on the spectrum, high functioning. I really want to work in communication, and really want to know what you're doing." He wanted that scientific buy-in. I told him, "Listen, if you want, you can ask me why I do every single thing. There's a reason behind
Mm,
it. I mean, whether it's reflection or open it, there's a little bit of the art there, but I'll tell you what it is and what it is, right? And that's actually helpful for him to work on his communication. But again, the transparency. I love what you said about one of my discovery calls. I always say, listen, I'm going to talk about a few things you're going to notice are different in coaching that I want you to be aware of. One is space. I'm like, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel weird.
mm,
It's going to feel different. But we're doing things differently to get different results. Our whole life is going to go. Here it's study hall time. We're going to work together. No one else take the time to think about things for more than 3 seconds. It's a very powerful tool. So I'm going to use that. You're going to feel uncomfortable because it's not common, but just want you to know it's part of that process. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable during that. One of my clients one time took a minute and a half to answer a question, and I was so happy he did. 90 seconds of me just sitting there in silence waiting for the process, right? But the other thing I say is reflections. I go, listen, there's a different neurologic circuit when you're thinking internal monologue, a different circuit when you say it out loud, a different circuit when you're hearing it. So
mm,
what I'll do sometimes, it's called reflection, different kinds of them, but I'm trying to engage this circuit to see how you feel about it, not to put words in your mouth. So sometimes I might make little stretches or make an assumption here, but I never want you to leave a session saying, "Wow, Diego didn't get me," or "He bulldozed me," or that's not it. I go, if you're feeling that, let me know right away. I'm using these tools for these reasons, right? And then so you can be transparent in that and what your tools. When I did medicine, I would tell people what I'm doing before I did it. Hey, I'm listening to your heart and lungs. I'm going to listen for this and this. What are you feeling?
yeah.
And so again, strengthening that partnership and taking away the mysticism of we being this perfect thing. And the last thing I'll say here is that what reminds you of medicine is that, I say medicine is studying uncertainty. You start learning what's common things, right? So with behavior, you learn common places to start. If you're having these symptoms, here's some good first, most people are helped by this. If not, this, and this. So we kind of had that experience of understanding populations and bell-shaped curves, right? But you're not a bell-shaped curve. If you're the standard deviation of 3, right? So I go, you're gonna run an experiment on yourself, and you're gonna let me know which one of these works for you, because only you know if you're feeling fulfilled, better, or how you want to define your success. Right? I'll pause there, Erica.
That's great. I think that brings us full circle back to this idea that the coach actually is an expert, and the way that a coach can be an educator with a coach-like approach is to teach people about these tools, to describe decisional balance. Not just to use it, but to explain why we're using it so that they can also use it in between conversations. We want to work ourselves out of a job. We want people to walk away from our relationship being more equipped to do self-coaching. And so pulling out that toolbox, choosing together what the next best tool is for that conversation is expert coaching.
Yeah, and Erica, I'll be honest with you on the time, and I can't believe the hours already flown by. We don't have a hard stop, so we'll go a few minutes over if you're okay. But it's very inspiring. Makes me want to definitely have you back on. There's so much. So we said earlier, how can we talk all about your life in an hour, right? In 30 minutes. So maybe we'll have you back on. But maybe if we can kind of, if you wouldn't mind, a lot of our audience is coaches, people interested in well-being, right? So are there any kind of maybe high yield things that you think are misunderstandings or you wish the field kind of would embrace more, either clients understanding or coaches, that you want those listening to kind of maybe mull over, maybe plant some seeds for them to think about as they're on their own journey from your experience?
I think what comes to mind is the hot topic on everybody's heart, and I'll even say gut right now, which is AI. And not appreciative inquiry, but artificial intelligence. Everybody loves appreciative inquiry, not so much artificial intelligence. I know there is a lot of angst about its role and impact on coaches, and I had that too. We at Wellcoaches had that too, and I'll hand it to Margaret Moore for really taking it on as a mission to learn more about it, and kind of the realization that AI is created by humans. It is gathering data from human knowledge into one place. So it's not artificial intelligence. It's human intelligence amplified. It can, when used wisely, create more wisdom. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we have just launched an AI coach assistant called Multi-Perspective AI that takes a number of cognitive theories into account. It is designed not to replace the coach in any way, but to support the coach in kind of digging more deeply, coming to quicker realizations and ahas as they think through their relationship with their clients. It's a virtual coaching supervisor, if you will. And so I just want to, I think, name AI is not going anywhere. and we ought to find ways to embrace it in a way that works for us as coaches. And we certainly believe our tool will, but I know there are other tools out there. I just don't think it does this because coaches I think it does us a disservice to be pushing so much against what is happening in the world and what our clients are interested in.
Not resisting change brought upon us, right?
Yes.
Erica, can I add? I'm curious your thought on this too. It's a great, I think it's a wonderful topic, right? That people are definitely facing uncertainty or fear or doubts about it. One thing I think is interesting, I think why people started liking it initially as users, it's the first time they actually get reflected back. What most of the AIs do, they first reflect back.
Yeah.
right? And everyone's like, oh my God. And that's, again, that powerful tool. It just feels, you feel seen, you feel heard. I think that's why people think it's so magical, right? That's what I think
Yeah.
is going on the initial part there. And to your point that we try to work ourselves out of a job, so we try to give clients tools. There's some really good tools. They're like, I'll be honest with you, one of my clients, he's like, Dave, I get SMART goals. Can we do that? Can you do that offline? I'll send you my SMART goal, on the dashboard afterwards, and we work on motivation part, right? So, or tracking certain things, or having for someone to reflect back on their journey experience, look at learning models, right? So I think it's how do we take these tools, seeing how they can support us, support our clients, because there's different ways those can support each part of that process. And ultimately, you can't replace human connection with anything. Human connections are irreplaceable. We're hardwired for that. It is in our DNA, quite literally. It's in our circuitry, right? And
That's right.
I think AI, to your point, because it's brought by humans, it has that flavor. So it is appealing, right? But and not trying to be negative, cynical here, but like social media does kind of hijack some of those same circuits that we have, but then we feel empty after a while. So I think as people, there's going to be, I think, a bubble where there's going to be a lot of trying to replace human connection with AI, and then we're going to start feeling empty inside and realize human connection just is irreplaceable. The core of well-being is your quality of social connection. So I do think we have to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. Just being very pragmatic. And if I could step back, looking at like medical history, there have been plenty of times we've tried to replace human connection with information, how-tos, etc. And we've then seen how important that human connection really is, because it can be hardwired. So let's let the AI do what it does best. We do what we do best, right? And how can it help us improve our standing, or how we serve our clients and them as well? And see as a virtual collaborator instead. Erika, thank you for bringing that perspective as we close off. Again, I could go on forever, and I usually do. So I'm gonna leave you here with the last little bit, Erika. For those interested in finding out more about you or Wellcoaches or all this awesome work you're doing, where can they go to learn more about that, or connect deeper?
Sure. Well, to learn more about Wellcoaches, just wellcoaches.com. We have both a coach training program, but also a membership, which is a monthly continuing education and professional development program where we offer 4 or 5 classes each month. And of course, our new AI product. And so we would love to have you there. If you're interested just in Erika Jackson as a person, my website is coacherikajackson.com, and there you'll see my personal thoughts about the world, my own value system, and so on. I do a lot of writing there. Thank you, Diego. It's been a joy.
Likewise, Eric. I really appreciate you making the time. You have a lot going on. I really do say this to a lot of my guests, who's really paved the way for me to be. I started in 2018 coaching, so I'm really always thankful for all the work that people have done before, and now we can kind of collaborate together and continue that synergy work. Thank you for the work you've been doing with all those collaborators to get coaching to be more well known and continue pushing the envelope. And let's continue collaborating. And yeah, you're always welcome back. And I'm looking forward to continue working together and pushing the field. Thank you for your time, Erika. And for all listeners today, thank you so much. And we'll catch you next week on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.